Okay, so let's see if there's anybody there who can hear us chattering back and forth. Let me look at my chat. And anybody around who got there a little bit early, feel free to put a message out in the chat saying that you can hear us. And I don't know if we can see how many people are in this thing or
No,
not.
I don't know if there's any way to do that. There used to be in the old
There used to be, yeah. You know, one of the fun things that happened during the last one was that we couldn't get Bob Zavarel into the session. So I said, okay, we're gonna show his video, and then I know I've got him in the Zoom session that I started up, and I sent a Zoom link to every single person in the chat.
Wow.
And we had 100 people move over to my Zoom meeting.
Wow.
Like that. The numbers were just like skyrocketing, and it was crazy.
Say hello. Is anybody out there?
Yeah, we went from no people to 100 people.
Wow. Well, it's 3 o'clock.
It is 3 o'clock. Okay, well, what we're going to do is assume that there are people here and say it's 3 o'clock and good afternoon. And welcome to the presentation on the ARRL Foundation Scholarship Program. My name is Scott. My call sign is N7JI. Our speaker today is also on the screen. His name is Mike. His call sign is W7VO. Actually, his name is Mike Ritz. He is the ARRL Northwestern Division Director. He's also a member and vice president of the ARRL Foundation, which administers the scholarship program. Former president of the Willamette Valley DX Club. Been licensed for nearly 50 years, and he's the founder and trustee of the Columbia River DX Club as well. And without any further ado, Mike, do you have anything to say before we start running your video?
No, I think we're good to go, Scott, and let's learn about the ARRL Foundation Scholarship Program.
Okay, so I'm going to hide us and start the video.
Hi, this is Mike Ritz, W7VO, and I am the Vice President of the ARRL Foundation. And we're going to talk about the ARRL Foundation Scholarship Program today. So let's get started. First of all, what is the ARRL Foundation? Well, we were founded in 1973 as a separate 503c3 nonprofit corporation, and our purpose is to provide scholarships and grants to worthy recipients. We are a separate entity from the ARRL, but controlled by the ARRL Board of Directors. And we have our own 9-member Board of Directors, with the majority being ARRL directors, and 4 that are not ARRL directors, so 5 that are, 4 that are not, plus a treasurer and a secretary. The ARRL Foundation mission statement: to advance the art, science, and societal benefits of the amateur radio service by awarding financial grants and scholarships to individuals and organizations in support of their charitable, educational, and scientific efforts. Current members of the foundation, the director members are David Norris, K5UZ, who also serves as president. He's also the Delta Division Director. Myself, W7VO, elected vice president. I'm from the Northwestern Division. Tom Abernathy, W3TOM, the Atlantic Division Director. Rhea Jairam, N2RJ, the Hudson Division Director. And Carl Lusselschwab, K9LA, the Central Division Director. Our non-director members are Kermit Carlson, W9XA, who is a former director of the Central Division. Tim Duffy, K3LR. Jim Fenstermaker, K9JF, who is a honorary ARRL vice president, former vice president, and David Minster, NA2AA, who is our ARRL CEO. Our treasurer is Rick Niswander, K7GM, and our secretary is Melissa Stemmer, KA7CLO, who is also the ARRL Director of Development. Where does our foundation money come from, right? Well, it doesn't grow on trees. The ARRL Foundation is funded by donations and grants from ARRL members, their families, and organizations. In other words, you. Current assets are about $7 million, mostly in endowments. Where does the money go? Well, a big chunk of it goes to support educational scholarships. This year in 2022, we awarded just over $900,000 in scholarships. We also have monetary grants for ham-rig organizations as part of our club grant program. It was 12,000 in 2021, but we'll be giving away this year about $500,000 in our club grant program. There's also, of course, we got to pay the bills. So we also have administrative reimbursement to the ARRL to pay for their staff time in processing applications and notifying the recipients, notifying the schools, cutting the checks, etc. We also have to pay our investment management fees to maintain the portfolio. We also have to pay for the application processing, which is now done by a third-party vendor. And we have fees that are for the third-party auditing and reporting. We do have to have everything audited, all the books audited, and report for IRS purposes. And if you're interested in looking at the foundation annual reports, they're all available on the ARRL website at www.arrl.org/ARRL-foundation-annual-reports. And here's a version or copy of our most recent right here on the left.
I'd like to ask something real quick. Is there anybody else who's having trouble hearing the audio? Because I noticed Dan, I just wanted to stop it for a sec. Dan said he's seeing slides, but no audio. And I actually went out to the auditorium and I could hear the audio in the auditorium. So you might want to, Mike, were you able, did you go out to the auditorium and listen?
Yeah, I will. Well, I don't want to lose where I am though.
You won't. If you just basically open up the VFairs thing, you can go out to the auditorium and start opening.
What I'm going to do is minimize this then, and then go back in.
Yeah.
I'll go out and do that.
Okay. I'm going to hit play again, I hope.
Talk about what we did in the scholarship side of things this year and look at the 2022 results. Well, we just finished awarding 139 scholarships with a combined worth of $921,000. Those scholarship values ranged from $500 to $25,000, which is up from $560 in 2021, $287,000 in 2020, and $123,000 in 2019. So you can see it's about been doubling every year for the last few years. And a huge thanks to the Amateur Radio Digital Communications Group, ARDC, for providing the grant money that's really made that possible. There are different types of scholarships or different ways that the people can set up scholarships. An example is, for example, an individual scholarship, either from an individual or family want to set up a scholarship. An example, that's the Chick Allen NW3Y scholarship. You can also have an in memoriam scholarship. For example, it's in memory of a silent key. An example of that is the in memory of Wills Morgan WX7P, which is also the Northwestern Division Scholarship. You can set up a scholarship as a club. For example, the Gwinnett Amateur Radio Society Scholarship. You can have a group scholarship from where the funding comes from multiple sources, maybe a combination of clubs or a group of people. A corporate scholarship, and a good example of that is the ARDC group and the generosity that they've certainly shown us. And any of these examples can be set up as either a permanently restricted scholarship or as a temporarily restricted scholarship. And that's basically how the scholarships are funded. Let's talk about those. A temporarily restricted scholarship is money donated where it's donated all at once in a lump sum, or it's added to periodically to provide scholarships, and it's basically used until it's exhausted per a terms of reference document, which is also known as a TOR. We'll talk about TORs here in a little bit. If there's insufficient money available, for example, it's gone on for a while, all the money's been used up, no scholarship will be awarded until more monies are added. When the funds do run low, and if we cannot locate the donor, for example, they become a silent key, the scholarship will be closed out. Any remaining funds will be transferred to the Foundation General Fund, which is used to pay expenses and also is also used to help fund ARRL scholarships. The minimum amount requirement to establish a temporarily restricted scholarship is currently $1,150, which provides a $1,000 scholarship plus a 1.5% fee to cover expenses of managing that scholarship. An example of this is the case where a donor gives us an amount, say it's $11,500, to fund a single $1,000 scholarship over the next 10 years or for the next 10 years. There will be one $1,000 scholarship awarded each year until the amount is reduced to zero. The scholarship is then closed out unless more funding is forthcoming. And sometimes on these scholarships, there are no viable candidates for a particular scholarship. In other words, none meets the requirement of the tour. So the funds will automatically roll over to the next year, and there might be, so it could go on for a while, or maybe 2 or 3 years if there aren't enough candidates to actually fulfill the tour. Let's move on now to permanently restricted scholarships. These are what are called perpetual scholarships. They're funded by the investment on the money provided for the scholarship. They're investment interest only. An example of this, say somebody donates $100,000 to set up a permanently restricted scholarship fund. The $100,000 stays in the bank, and we only live on the scholarships are only funded out of the investment earnings on that $100,000 and to pay the foundation expenses. If the earnings alone are not enough, for example, the stock market's way down, as they are now, perhaps, and so we can't meet the dollar requirement to, for example, say we're going to give $1,000 out. Well, there's not $1,000 worth of interest on that amount of money. Then we basically hold that money and we combine it with next year's money, and hopefully that's enough to take care of it. Let's talk about these terms of reference documents, and these are really the heart of an ARRL Foundation scholarship. It's a document giving us direction and describing a donor's wishes when a scholarship is created. It specifies the award criteria, how much the scholarship is going to be, how often it's going to be awarded, what the amount is going to be, and the type, whether it's going to be a permanently or temporarily restricted scholarship. It can stipulate specific vetting criteria, and some common ones are, for example, must be a licensed radio amateur. And by the way, this is a requirement for any ARRL handled scholarship. There may be a license class restriction, must be a general class or higher amateur. That's also fairly common. There might be a geographical restriction. For example, the applicant must reside in Texas. There may be a major related restriction. For example, you may require a STEM major, a medical major, and just basically an engineering major, or sometimes there are no restrictions on this. So that it definitely makes it a lot harder to vet because there may be many, many more students that are going to qualify for the other requirements. There may be a specific GPA requirement, or it just may specify a top tier student where it kind of leaves it open. A lot of these scholarships do require a high level of amateur radio activity, and in any scholarship, it always helps. A lot of times, the deciding factor that we have with two applications, where everything else is basically equal, the level of amateur radio activity, because we are an ARRL is a radio organization, ham radio organization, having a high level of ham radio activity from the applicant for a scholarship certainly helps. It cannot hurt. Let's talk about a couple of other tour special requirements. A lot of the donors want to see written documentation supporting ham radio activity or civic activity, a letter from a club officer or whoever you're doing the civic work for. A proven disability. Several of these scholarships may be reserved for people with disabilities, and they may require written proof provided from a doctor of that disability. It may be a requirement that the student be attending a specific institution. For example, must be attending or planning to attend Texas A&M University. And this is one thing to keep in mind that's fairly important. All scholarships require that college and or high school transcripts. So if you're in college, whatever college transcripts you have, if you're going into college, your high school transcripts, and all other supporting documentation be supplied by the deadline given. And one thing we run into year after year is students send everything in there. They forget to send in the letters of reference or send in the transcripts, and their application winds up getting thrown out because the documentation is incomplete. And oh, by the way, you used to be able to supply that stuff later after the application was put in, but because now we're using a software package, it must now be submitted with the application. So you should have it done well in advance, ready to go when you go on the computer to enter your data for the application. Let's look at an example of a terms of reference document. This particular one is for the Wills Morgan W7VO Northwestern Division Memorial Scholarship, which stipulates it's going to be a single $2,000 yearly scholarship award, and it must be given to a student who, number one, resides in the ARRL Northwestern Division. Northwestern Division comprises the states of Oregon, Washington, Montana, Idaho, or Alaska. Is or will be pursuing a STEM curriculum major, something in the sciences, technology, engineering, or math. Has a cumulative GPA or 3.0 or above. Now, it can either be college if you're a sophomore or a junior or even a senior. You can use your college transcripts. If you're going into from high school, we need your full high school transcripts. Has a cumulative GPA of 3.0 or above. Be an active radio amateur and show proof of this activity. We just talked about that. This is one of the tours that does require that. And hold at least a general class license. So we're going to be emphasizing this on and off here. If you're a technician and have a technician license and you're trying to get a scholarship, one of the things we look at is ham radio activity. And generally, somebody who's gone to the extra effort to get an extra class license is going to have a little bit of a leg up over somebody who only has a technician class license. So this particular scholarship requires you have at least a general class license. Otherwise, you won't even be considered for it. And for me, I do this scholarship. I live in the Northwestern Division here. I do this scholarship every year. And it's one of the easier ones to award because it is geographically limited. So I can do a Excel data sort for what state the recipient is in. I can look at the grade point averages and sort by grade point average. I can look at the majors and knock out the ones that are not STEM related. And then I can go in and read about and do a little research on their ham radio activity. So to me, this is one I don't spend a whole lot of time. I don't need to. When the tours have very limited requirements, the pool of applicants becomes much larger and becomes a much larger job. So how does one apply for a foundation scholarship? Well, the first thing you do is keep checking into the ARRL Foundation website at arrl.org/scholarship-program. Follow the directions shown on the website. And by the way, the website is not yet updated for the upcoming 2023-2024 season. And you used to have to apply for individual scholarships, figure out which scholarships you wanted to apply for and apply for them individually. Now, because we're using the software program, once you basically load your data into the computer, their software at the third party does some of the initial vetting and decides which scholarships you qualify for. And we always try to, always try to give you the highest value scholarship out of all the scholarships that are available that you qualify for. All this collection is handled by a company called Kaleidoscope, and they do all the data collection. So when you go on the computer and loading in all your data as part of your application process, they handle all that. They also do some of the initial processing and sorting. For example, if a tour has a requirement where somebody has to live in Texas, it will knock everybody out for that particular scholarship and only give us the applicants that actually live in Texas. Makes our job easier. It certainly makes the handling at the ARRL headquarters part easier of working with the applications themselves. It's all done online. Some important application tips. Number one, know the dates, right? This is really important. Know when the scholarship application window opens and when it closes. They're expecting this year, I heard through the grapevine, that the application window is likely to be opening up on October 1st, and it always closes at midnight Eastern time on December 31st. Believe it or not, as wide as this is, a lot of applicants will still turn their applications in the last week of December. Number two is fill out all the questions on the online application. The more information you can get us, the better we can understand who you are and how you qualify for a particular scholarship. So make sure you fill everything out as completely as you can. Do make sure you input PDF or JPEG versions of all required documentation by the deadline. I talked about that already. That includes transcripts if letters of recommendation are required, if a proof of a disability is required, anything that we need to make sure that you get that, uploaded to the website and it's there by the deadline. And keep in mind, there are no age requirements for the majority of scholarships. There are a few that say that they want the scholarship to go to a young applicant, and there we've got to draw a line somewhere, but many of these don't. And we've actually given a few big scholarships this year to people that were kind of going through career crises and wanted to go out and get a higher degree or just to get a degree where they felt they had hit a glass ceiling. And you'd be surprised that there are people that want to do that, and we certainly support that. And by the way, the ones that we did look at, several of them were very active amateurs and just looking for another career to better themselves. About the scholarship vetting process. Well, for us, it's very labor intensive. There are many hours of work from one end of this to the other. Just imagine working with a spreadsheet, a big giant Excel spreadsheet that's 180 rows deep, one row for every applicant, by about 200 columns wide, which are all the answers to the questions, all the data, and then all the scholarships that there could be about 140 different scholarships. So just imagine a huge spreadsheet, and it's quite a bit of work. From the entire committee, which are basically all volunteer, plus headquarters staff, we put in a total of about 700 hours of work done each year in the vetting, as part of the vetting candidate process, and also working with the schools and distributing funds. So how are scholarships vetted? What are we looking for, and how do we vet these applicants for these scholarships? Well, each scholarship committee member is assigned a list of scholarships to review. And this time, because we had so many dollars worth of scholarships, a lot of people applying for those, we actually had to bring in some extra help. We brought in some extra vice directors and a few other people that were expert in dealing with scholarships. We're each given 10 to 15 different scholarships to review candidates for, plus some that were common. For example, the ARRL scholarships, because they were so large and important, we had a few extra things that we did for those, and we worked on those scholarships as teams. We always vet for the highest dollar scholarships first. So we get all the $25,000 scholarships out of the way, and then the $15,000, and the $10,000, and $5,000, and we always make sure that the candidates get the highest value scholarship that they are qualified for. So we don't, $500 scholarship and stop. No, we start with the pool of candidates that meet the criteria for the largest dollars. The ones that don't get that then go down to the next one and work their way down for whatever they qualify for. So we always try to make sure that the candidates receive the highest dollar value scholarship they qualify for. The committee members review and vets candidates selected by the Kaleidoscope data, sort for the scholarship under consideration. So we look at all the data that's there, and actually I go through also, I'm sure everybody else does too, we verify the Kaleidoscope data is correct. For example, that they've given us all the students that are living in Arizona that could be there. Maybe the data, the Kaleidoscope software missed one. I double check it all anyway, and I'm sure everybody else does too. The member then reviews each terms of requirements for each scholarship and determine which candidate best meets the TOR requirements. And sometimes there are no qualified candidates, especially this last year. We had a lot of high-value ARDC scholarships that sucked up a lot of the pool. And by the time we got to the smaller scholarships, there weren't any qualified scholarships left because they were all sucked up by the larger value scholarship. That's a good problem to have. For higher value scholarships, we did do personal interviews, are scheduled via Zoom. And the Zoom calls are basically a team of 2 or 3 committee members that are there with the applicant. And that's to find out more and get more of a feeling about the actual applicant himself, beyond what's on the paper. Sometimes you wind up with applicants that look good on paper, and you talk to them on a Zoom call, and you find it's not quite the same person that's there. Sometimes you have one that doesn't look so good, but you interview them and you find out they're really fantastic. So I think that adding a little bit of personal part to this makes it really nice to and have this as a tool in our tool belt to help vet for scholarships. We only do this for the high dollar ones. If we did it for all of them, we'd be spending many more months trying to get all these done. Each member then determines a first, second, and kind of a third place choice for each scholarship they were assigned. And the reason for that is, I mentioned we always vet for the highest dollar ones first, but we're all kind of vetting these in parallel. I'll handle my 15 scholarships. Rhea will handle her 15 scholarships. Kermit will do his 15 scholarships. And sometimes they kind of, I may have more $1,000 scholarships I'm working with, and Kermit may have $2,000 scholarships, and you'll have an applicant that might meet the criteria for both and finish in first place in both. Well, if that happens, Kermit will win, and the applicant will get the $2,000 scholarship. And for my $1,000 scholarship, I've got to go to my second choice, sometimes my third choice, sometimes even my fourth choice or fifth choice. So once again, we always try to make sure that the scholarship recipient wins the highest award that they can. Then the entire scholarship committee reviews the list of recommendations. Starting with the highest value dollar of the scholarship, each candidate's qualifications are discussed based on the tour recommended by the teams, or the tour recommendation by the teams. And finally, we give this list to the entire foundation board for discussion and their formal approval. So the full foundation board takes the scholarship committee's recommendations and we discuss with them. Once that's done, it's then forwarded to the ARRL development department, who then notifies recipients. And then finally, checks are cut and sent to the recipient's college finance department for distribution. So how does one win a foundation scholarship? What can you do to get a leg up in this process? Well, number one, you have to have an amateur radio license, right? And as I mentioned before, the higher the class of that license, the better off you're going to be. If you're a technician, I highly recommend you work hard and advance at least to general, if not extra, because it'll certainly help your scholarship chances. Read and understand the tour documents. They're all online. They're all on the ARRL Foundation website, so you can understand what the donors are looking for. The more you can fill in the spots of those tours, the higher your chances are going to be to win a scholarship. Be an ARRL member. And it's not just because I am a director for the ARRL, but many of the tours require an ARRL membership. Not all, but some. Get on the air and show activity. Be radioactive, right? Don't just have a license in your pocket and say that look, I am licensed, but you find out that they're licensed, but they've never really been on the air, or maybe they got their license a month before they submitted their application because they thought it might help them. Well, we do a little research on just about everybody. And we can look at tools like looking at qrz.com and see if how long they've been licensed and kind of verify that. And so we have ways we have our own ways we can look and discover how active the person has been. Once again, when you fill out the application, make sure you put all of your ham radio activity in there, because we're certainly going to be looking for it. And I highly recommend you join your local club and get involved in your local radio club. There are several national radio clubs. For example, there's the A1 Operators Club, or some of the CW clubs, or there's other national organizations besides the ARRL. But the more active you can be in those and be a member of those, the higher your chances are going to be of winning a scholarship. Because once again, it shows radio activity. It's really a competitive environment. That's really important to think about. So excel in your studies. I can tell you right now that for most of to win, especially the high dollar, $25,000, $15,000, $10,000, $5,000 scholarships, you've got to have a pretty darn good GPA. A minimum of 3.0 out of 4 for most foundation scholarships. I think probably 90% of them. And if you really expect to get one of the larger dollar scholarships, you better have at least a 3.5 or greater grade point average. There are a lot of, I'd say out of 140 candidates that we looked at last year, I think there was 175 candidates for 139 scholarships. I bet you 40 or so had GPAs of 4.0 or higher. have other interests, more than just ham radio, more than just going to school. But one thing we look at is looking for well-roundedness. And we've had people who have are students that have been in choirs, have been in bands. One of them was a black belt in Taekwondo, opera singing. I mean, piano playing, right? Music. It's good to see a nice, well-rounded person. But don't major in amateur radio. And we've seen a few applicants who are great hams. They're active hams. They're in every contest. They're really active in their club, but their grade point average isn't so high. Why? Because they spent a lot of time not studying, but playing with the radio. But it's okay to have a minor, right? Stay active and make sure you keep those grades up. And find great mentors. And the way you do that is through your local amateur radio club and help them help you get radio active. So that's all I've got for today. I want to thank you guys for your time. And now we're going to turn it over for questions and answers. And thank you.
Okay, well, I don't know how many people we've got here today, but I hope everybody can hear okay. I hope the audio cleared itself up. And that being said, Mike, do you have any additional comments before we start?
No, I think I do want to make a clarification. The foundation is a 501c3, not a 503. That's a typo in there. And I want to reiterate also that just because you have a lower grade point average in the in the twos rather than the threes, don't discount applying for an ARRL scholarship, because there are several of the ARRL scholarships, or the ones that we run, that do not have a grade point average. And when we get down to brass tacks, there are other things that we look at other than grade point average. So do not be afraid, whether you're an older ham or a younger ham. Don't be afraid to apply for an ARRL scholarship. There is no downside.
Okay, well, I know that I just actually went out to the auditorium, and I know that the audio is at least working, so that's a good sign. And I don't know, I can't tell how many people we've got in the crowd. I don't know whether or not we've got any comments. We don't have any comments yet, but oh, look, there's a dog. So if anybody has any comments or questions, this is the Q&A session. Time to go ahead and ask them. I know that it's 6:30 on the East Coast, and it's the middle of the night in Europe. So if anybody has any questions or comments, now's a good time to ask. And this for everyone's edification, this is Oliver.
Hello, Oliver.
K9 DOG. He's my dog-in-law. He does not have his license. So, well, Mike, I don't know. We don't seem to have any comments out there.
Well, that's good. That's either good or bad.
That's either good or bad. Yeah.
Either they got so much information that I answered all their questions, or they don't have any questions, or there's nobody out there. One of the three.
But it's impossible to tell which one it is. So,
well, let's do a last chance.
I walk Oliver and they scored 2 touchdowns.
Anyone? Well, at the very least, we tried. So, all right. Anything else to add?
No, I want to thank you, Scott, for your time here this evening, and we will talk to you later.
All right, and thanks again, Mike. And for those who are out there, if you're out there and just being quiet, then I guess we answered all your questions. And have a good time at the rest of the show. Enjoy the presentations. Enjoy the exhibit hall, and we'll see you next time.
All right, 7-3.